Well, it's a new year. I've put together a small new space so that I can have a place to work, build, game, stream, and lucky for me, I had time over the holidays to do that. And while I was waiting, I finally received my 3090 Strix OC from ASUS. So after 4 months of waiting to finally assemble my new build, the time has finally come. So for my 2021 build, I wanted to put together a water-cooled system, water cooling both the graphics card and the CPU. So to do that, I've chosen a few parts from EK. So I'm using the EK Quantum Kinetic Reservoir Pump Combo. It's a D5 pump that also works with PWM, so I can adjust the speed settings on it. We're going to be using the EK Quantum Momentum water block, which is a monoblock for the CPU, and the Dark Hero Crosshair 8 motherboard from ASUS. We're going to be throwing in 64 gigabytes of Corsair Dominator Platinum RAM, and we're going for more or less a white build here. They didn't have a light hero, so I had to go with a dark hero. And we're going to be using the Corsair HX1200i power supply. The 1200i power supply has multi-rail support, and that has to be turned off in the IQ software in order to support single rail in order to power the 3090. There's a lot of people that are having issues powering the 3090s when they leave this in multi-rail setup. But unlike some of the other power supplies, this one doesn't have a switch. So you have to actually load it up, boot it up, get into Windows, install IQ, and then switch it over to single rail mode. It's kind of inconvenient. But we should at least, if we set up the wiring properly, be able to boot into Windows to make those changes. For the RTX 3090, we'll also be going with the EK Quantum Vector cooling block and backplate. The goal with this 3090 being water cooled is that we want to get the most performance out of the 3090 as we can in both gaming and video editing, workspace, rendering, and anything else that we want to do with it. So for hard drives, we wanted to avoid putting any mechanical hard drives into the computer. So we went with a 2 terabyte Western Digital SN850. Black, that's going to be for our OS drive, games, and anything that we want to use high-speed storage for. For the second hard drive, we really wanted to take advantage of that second M.2 slot on the Dark Hero motherboard, so we picked up a Sabrent Rocket 4 terabyte PCIe 4 M.2 drive, and while it was a little bit pricier, having 4 terabyte of high-speed storage for games and videos and video editing and anything else that we want, we felt would be a really good trade-off. The price was actually fairly good, considering a 4 terabyte solid-state drive, 3 or 4 years ago would have been several $1,000s. This is a good option for somebody looking to not have mechanical hard drives in their system. Now, that being said, I am going to order a mechanical drive because I felt keeping a lot of archived storage, archived videos on a 4 terabyte M.2 drive would be kind of wasteful. So we will be getting a 10 terabyte mechanical hard drive as well, and we'll install that down the road. This should be more than sufficient for me for the next couple of months. For the CPU, we're going with the AMD Ryzen 5950X. My previous system was the 6700K, 4 cores and 8 threads. I wanted to go with something with a little more juice. So 16 cores was something I've been eyeing up for many years. And I feel like the 5950X really kind of gives you an entry level, getting into something that's not quite a thread-ripper, but it will get you into a high-performance compute processor that's going to be able to do all kinds of workstation, gaming, and anything else you want to throw at it without even breaking a sweat. What are my goals for this system? Well, I want a system that can overclock, and I want it to stay quiet. So I don't want fans that run at 2000 RPM. I want fans to stay around 1000 or 1200 RPM at any given point. So in order to keep this system cool, we're going to go with two 360 millimeter radiators. We're going to do a 30 millimeter Alphacool for the top, and then we're going to do a 45 millimeter Alphacool for the bottom as an intake. So that'll be in a push-pull configuration so that we can maximize the cooling that we get out of the fresh air coming in through the bottom of the case. So this build is going to be done over the course of several weeks, maybe even over the course of the next month, and it's going to be done taking my time because I really want to enjoy putting the system together. For me, I usually do a new build every 5 to 7 years for myself. I get to build lots of computers for other people, but I rarely get to build myself a brand new system. And because I'm going ultra high end for this system, I want to enjoy it. I want to take my time. So we're going to be doing a few customizations. We're going to be painting the radiators white, and I'll be showing how to do that. And then we're also going to be doing acrylic water tubing. So the acrylic tubing is a little harder to work with than PETG. It has to have a lot higher temperatures, but acrylic tubing looks really, really good. It captures light and kind of has a bit more of a shine to it than PETG tubing, so we can really go for that finished look. We are going to be doing some RGB in this build. My previous builds had lighting, but not really a whole lot of RGB. And I felt, I really want to have my one system for 2021 where I can go all out with RGB. So, the EK Quantum Kinetic supports RGB, the water block supports RGB, pretty much everything does. And so it might be a little rainbow pukey, but I'm going to try to do this build with a little class and a little style so that even the people out there that don't like RGB can appreciate what goes into a build like this. So I'm going to keep these videos rather short, maybe 12 or 15 minutes, just kind of going through some of what I'm doing, the parts I'm choosing, try not to show any of the boring stuff like connecting cables and wiring. And when the build is done, hopefully I can get in and do some gaming, some streaming, and show everybody what these kinds of systems can actually do. There's a lot of benchmarks out there that can say, oh, the 3090 is super fast, best on the market, or the 5950X is really great and beats all the benchmarks. But what does that actually mean for someone who's video editing or gaming? And if you're going to build a system like this and you're not going to actually use it, what's the point? So I intend on getting a lot of gaming in on this system, and I'm looking forward to finishing it. All right, so it's time for me to get this build started. We're going to be doing this build in the Lian-Li O11 Dynamic XL case. I know, I tried to find another case that I loved to do this build in, but the O11 Dynamic XL, even though it's been done 1,000 times before, it's just a great case. There's a reason why it's got Der Bauer's stamp on there. So let's go ahead and get this build started. We'll start by digging into the Dark Hero Crosshair 8 motherboard. And when you're starting a build like this, one of the key things you need to remember is that if you're water cooling your motherboard or your 3090, you're immediately voiding your warranty. So you've got, like, in Canadian dollars, like $3,000 worth of computer parts here that we're going to be voiding the warranty on. So we want to actually set these up first with a different processor, different heat sink, and just make sure that they're fully functional. So to do that, I've got a 3600 XT CPU that I'll be installing on the motherboard to do initial testing to make sure that all the components are working and functioning within specifications before I go ahead and update and install the 5950X. Now, you might ask, well, why not just install the 5950X first and then test it on that? Well, the challenge is the 5950X is not advised to be air-cooled. You can air-cool it. You could put a Noctua D15. That would definitely keep it cool for the most part. But this is a hot part, a very hot CPU. So rather than installing this and installing the water cooling and then getting everything set up, only to have to tear it down if something goes wrong, I want to make sure that I've tested every component completely before I actually get it powered up, started, and get everything installed. So for starters, we'll get everything mounted into the motherboard, the hard drives, the 3600 XT CPU. Then we'll get the GPU installed, and we're going to power it up, install Windows, and just make sure that everything is functioning before we go ahead and start ripping, graphics card coolers off and ripping off VRM coolers off of the motherboard. So let's dig in.